Good evening, everybody. How are you doing? Haley Slaughter, and this is the referee question and answer Q&A show that we've been doing with some fitness experts. We're trying to get a referee perspective on all these things that maybe some people don't know too much about. Tonight we'll be talking about periodization of training, and we have Jarrod. Tell us your last name again, because I am awful.
My name's Jarrod Presland.
Jarrod Presland. It sounds cooler when you say it anyway. So anyhow, Jarrod has been helping two of our referees who were striving to get to the Women's World Cup here at the end of the year. Unfortunately, the Women's World Cup has been postponed. However, we still have something to learn from them and the guidance that Jarrod has been giving them. Before we launch into the questions, I just wanted to thank USA Rugby, acknowledge that they've given us this platform as referees to communicate with each other, and they're providing the prizes for our raffle. So tonight, a thorn supplement. Gosh, it was something that I couldn't say 3 times fast. Anyhow, it's supplement night. So, when you get your stuff, you can, recover properly and all those kind of things. Also, thanks to the referee development working group. We're trying to bring you guys stuff while the referee in-laws committee is getting everything organized for when we all return to play. So anyhow, Jarrod Presland, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. So
thanks for inviting me.
Talk to us a little bit about planning a year season. I guess give us the macro, the meso, and micro view, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. So the world of rugby refereeing sort of changed from when I first started, when you had a pretty definite off season that occurred, but with the sevens tournaments that had taken off, you're pretty much training and refereeing 11 to 12 months of the year. So that makes the typical kind of periodization that you might have for an athlete kind of has to go out the window a fair bit. I guess the key things is that you need to be able to cover off on all of the components of fitness and what makes fitness that is required for a referee. So the big one is obviously your aerobic, your fitness base, being able to build that up to a level that enables you to be able to cope with the demands of the game. And across the board, the demands of the game are getting greater because the athletes are getting fitter, the game's getting faster, and the referees need to be able to cope with that and keep up. So building that aerobic base, of course, having a good level of speed to be able to keep up with the game, and also being able to repeat those efforts of speed. So there's significant periods of the game where there's walking, periods where we're jogging, and then there's periods where we've got a sprint, and sometimes we have to back that sprint up pretty quickly with another sprint. So building up the capacity to be able to tolerate that's important as well. And then to supplement that and to complement that is building on our strength. So your strength is pretty much your health insurance. That's what's going to help keep you on the field. And mean that you can do what you want to do each Saturday, which is get out and referee. So it's important to fit those components in into your training all year round. Excuse me. So the traditional kind of model of periodization, where you would tend to work on an aerobic base, for example, for a period of time, and then you would ease back on that volume of longer kind of running, and then increase the intensity and speed of that running. That's sort of gone out the window these days, and particularly with the fact that we have to train all year round. So that typical what's called a linear periodization model doesn't really work for a rugby referee. So the type of the method that is used, and I don't like to use these terms too much because they're a little bit specialist, but it's called like a conjugate method. And essentially you're working all of those properties, so your aerobic fitness, your repeat speed type fitness, your strength, and your normal speed at the same time. But you just have you just play around with the levels of it as you go through a cycle. So for example, typically with the aerobic type base work, you'll start off. I work on 6-week cycles with the referees that I work with. In general, you can go 8-week, you can go 4-week, depending on how you want to operate. But essentially, even in those sort of 6-week cycles, you're gradually increasing the volume, and then in that 6th week, you're dropping things back again to allow yourself to recover.
Right. So we're going up with our training, and then we're tapering back off so that we're well rested when the event happens.
Yeah, correct. And I guess it depends on what your ultimate event might be. Obviously, with when you're refereeing in a season, you've got games every weekend, so you can't sort of peak for every game, but you may be peaking for a pinnacle kind of event that you might be involved in, or it's just maintaining that fitness, so ensuring that you're not going into a state of overtraining, and then obviously risking illness and injury.
Yeah, let's talk about overtraining a little bit, because you know, a lot of people think they have to be balls to the wall every day. They may not necessarily be recovering 100% because they feel like they have to do work, and then, you know, like you said, symptoms of overtraining, physical symptoms of overtraining, you know, your immune system is affected, your sleep is affected, and you can just get burned out, you know. Pardon me. What do you say to referees or athletes in general who are burned out, who just burned themselves out working out?
Yeah, I mean, we have to understand that it's not just the stresses of training aren't, they can't be looked at in isolation when it comes to overtraining. So there's other stresses in your life, relationships, work, study, diet, all those sorts of stresses can add to that, the risk of burnout. The key thing that I like to get across to the athletes that I work with is that you know your body, and just because it's written down on the piece of paper that you're down to do a program, and I was talking to Amelia about this yesterday, if you're not feeling it that day, or you know that you haven't recovered from the previous session, or you've had a tournament where you've been on your feet a lot and you're fatigued, then just because it's written down that you're supposed to go do a field running session, doesn't mean that you have to do that session. Doesn't mean that you necessarily do nothing. Sometimes it might require you to do nothing, but you can always do something, whether it be an off-feet fitness session, so utilizing a rower or a cycle erg or a cross trainer, that sort of thing. Obviously getting into a swimming pool, doing that kind of work, anything where it's a little less taxing on the body, stretching session, a lightweight session, like those sort of things. Like, just because it's in the plan doesn't mean that you have to do it. If you're feeling that way, and just monitoring your symptoms, monitoring your sleep, monitoring just your general well-being, how you're feeling, and that could just be a simple, today it's a sad face, normal face, or a happy face, depending on how you're feeling. Tracking those sort of things as well can give you a good indication of how you're coping with the training load.
Right. So that's actually really cool. I mean, when I journaled, I would write down all my workouts just so I could remember what I did last time, if I wanted to, increase, decrease. How much detail do you feel like is required? I mean, I guess it depends on different goals, but if someone is just getting into a routine, just like some of us have been just over this last month, how is it so that you can get into it without jumping in both feet, and kind of like a car that's not been warmed up and is fixing to might break down?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's if you're going from having not done much for a period of time, you obviously need to ease back into it, and build that capacity to increase your running sort of load. So if you look at increasing your distances by between sort of 5 and 10% a week, up to a point, will just that gradual increase is key. We've got to remember that we're not trying to peak. We're not like necessarily elite athletes, and elite athletes will have access to massage therapists and physiotherapists. top nutrition, they can have naps during the day, they, you know, even if they're training at the end of the day. Like most referees, if you're not a professional, you have a job, and even some of the, you know, referees that are running around out in, say, the IRB World Sevens, the World Rugby Sevens, they've still got full-time jobs that they have to, you know, factor in around their training. So yeah, you've got to take all those sort of things into consideration, and make it a gradual process that you're increasing that volume.
Okay, well, let's talk about what is it? GAS, General Adaptation Syndrome. I really like that acronym. Anyways, so we're told. Well, okay, I'll tell the story. So I was working with a referee who had a lot of trunk rotation when he ran, and I was like, dude, what do you do for your core? He's like, 6-minute abs. And I'm like, well, how long have you been doing 6-minute abs? He's like, oh, 7 or 8 years. So I was just like, maybe you need to like change it up a little bit. Like your body likes a little bit of a challenge. When it gets used to stuff, it gets kind of bored. Like, can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And that's part of that burnout overtraining thing as well. Like we need that stimulation to change, you know, to change things up. You will create adaptation up to a point with the same sort of training, but eventually you're going to have to shock the body with something a little bit different to, you know, continue that adaptation. So, and that's where someone like myself comes into, you know, preparing programs for people, so that they're not just downloading something from the internet. And that's probably one of the biggest issues that we come up with, is something like the 6-minute abs. I mean, you won't find a crunch or a sit up in any of the programs that I deal with, because, you know, the majority of people, like we tend to have a way that we would, when we're sitting, that we put load on certain joints in our back, depending on our biomechanics, and aggravating that by basically bending at that point for, you know, copious number of reps, can sort of fire up those joints and make them unhappy. So the type of exercises that I look to program are more just, you know, the deep core muscles that support the spine, not so much your beach abs.
Yeah.
But what happens is we see these ripped people on Instagram, or we see what someone else is doing, and we try and replicate that. And that's, you know, that's where the individualization sort of comes into it, where if you can work with someone a little bit more closely, that they're not just cookie cuttering a program,
Right.
you know, that you can make sure that you're doing something that's actually going to benefit you, and that's based on your training history, what your movement competency is, and you know, how well you move.
So how is it? So one of the hardest things for an athlete is to learn how to listen to their body. So just like you said, if if something's written down on a training schedule, if you're not feeling it that day, you don't have to do it, and you're not a bad person if you don't do it. How are we able to not crap? What was the question? God, I'm awful.
Not do
So,
exactly what's on the program just because it's
I was gonna
there.
ask you, it was like listening to your body. Why is it hard for us to listen to our bodies? First of all, I mean, like I had to learn the super hard way. And then since then, I recovery, I've been able to, I got in a routine where, I was resting, like I was tapering down from the game in the week. And then I kind of, so I had a little bit of a schedule where I would, ink my training up during the week and then, rest a little bit and have the game. But listening to your body is so hard because we're told no pain, no gain. And we want to, we feel like we have to go at it all the time or we're just not doing it right. So how can we learn to listen to our body?
Yeah, I guess that's a challenge because that's everyone's individual, and often we're in this because we're a little bit competitive, and that can be a good thing because I think, historically referees, like athletic prowess hadn't been a priority, and now that it is, and I was just amazed. I remember the first time I was involved in a Super Rugby referee camp down in Sydney, and walking into this room and like looking at these people and thinking, wow, if I didn't know that they were referees, I'll be wondering what team this is, what sport they play and who they are, because they they look like athletes, like they're ready to play some sort of sport, and that's developed probably over the last sort of 10 years. But it is very difficult to listen to your body when something's written down. But it's more if you actually document it, if you're writing it down and journaling, like you mentioned earlier, you can actually see the signs, and you have more objective rather than guessing. And if you've been honest with that, you can look at things like your resting heart rate to a degree. You look at your sleep quality, how you're feeling in general, your soreness after, excuse me, pulling up after training sessions. All of those things can sort of help you make that decision about what that session might look like that day. When you don't have a coach that's there with you to kind of see how you present on the day, as a coach, you can kind of make a call when everyone's high-fiving and cheering and coming in looking all happy. You can hit it hard that day. If people are moping in or an individual's moping in, then you know that you've got to make some sort of adjustment. So if you can sort of journal, note how you're feeling, how you pulled up, what those, if you've got some times for some reps or some distances for some reps that you know that you hit last time that you couldn't hit this time, that you might need to add some recovery, because there's a good quote by Shona Helton, who's a recovery scientist up here in Australia, who says, like, the only training you're benefiting from is the training you're recovering from. So if you're not getting that part right, then you're driving yourself into the ground.
Right. So just like over this last month or 5 weeks, we've given people like a reason to get off the couch, and hopefully this is something that they'll take forward and keep doing. So we've talked about, planning out a long period of time. Is there something that we could do? Are there certain things that we should do every day to kind of maintain just a base level of, fitness coordination, balance, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Stretching is good. Getting on the foam roller, rolling out areas that are tight, calves, ITB, quads, etc. Using trigger balls as well, any points that are tight, releasing those sort of triggers. But I think one of the best exercises that we can do is skipping, jump rope, to use an American terminology. It's a great, it's the first point of contact on the ground, your foot, ankle, calf complex. And if we have referees in this group that are getting on in years into the 40s and above, then calf strains are a really common injury that occur in that age group. So maintaining that integrity of that calf ankle complex is really important, and skipping is a really good way to do that. And there's research out there to show that you can actually improve even your running times and 10Ks, etc., by adding some skipping, jump rope as part of your warm up. So I like to add that into the referees that I work with as part of their warm up, to get on a rope for 5 minutes, where you might start with 20 seconds of jump rope, 40 seconds recovery, do that 5 times, build to 30-30, 40-20, 50-10 before you can go for 5 minutes straight. And that's a good way to really build that calf complex and reduce that risk of injury. So that's something that you can do as part of a warm-up for every day. Also look at just general hip mobility work is really important. So the athletes that I work with have a hip mobility circuit that they do as part of their warm-up, but it's also something that you can do every day. Some of your core strength exercises, there's a gentleman by the name of Stuart McGill who has some exercises called the McGill Big Three. And so they're essentially a curl up and hold at the front, for the front part of your abs, side plank for the sides of your abs, obviously, and then a bird dog, which is for your back, which kind of creates a cylinder around that spine. And again, his research has shown that performance has increased, through just doing those exercises prior to doing a strength workout or doing a running workout, etc. So those are the sort of things, a little bit of maintenance that you can do to, to help you with that you can do every day.
Cool. Well, that's really cool. What I want to do now, I'd like to show some video of our two athletes that you've been training with, Kat Roche and Amelia Luciano. So they were training for the Women's World Cup, and they had, they were on this program until it was announced like last week that is postponed. And so we know like there were a lot of Olympians who, their whole lives, like, this is my last shot, or, you know what I mean? Like, and who am I if I'm not working towards this? So we have this big thing in mind, and, we train and train and train, and then it gets canceled. Like, was it worth it? Like, what was it all for naught? Or, I mean, it's not a rhetorical question.
Yeah, no, it was disappointing. And the girls asked the same sort of question, like, oh, do we carry on? Because obviously I wrote the next phase of the program, like, and sent it to them a few days before that announcement was made, and they had a testing window that was coming up with a Bronco test and a speed test and some skin folds for World Rugby. But we just keep it the same. Like the program would just continue, just still follows that same sort of conjugate kind of method, and building up in this it's an 8-week program, but it's sort of broken into 2 4-week blocks with a little bit of a download week in the middle there, it'll just follow on as per normal, because they were still, like, the World Cup is in September, well, was going to be in September, October, so this was just would be this sort of thing that would be in the program anyway, regardless of whether there was a World Cup at the end. So just to get their mindset back into the motivation to do the work, and the carrot's still there for 2022, and I'm sure it gives them even more time. They both look like fantastic athletes anyway, but it's a bit of a shame for them, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And
well,
for everyone that's involved.
Training is and preparation is an award in and of itself. So I mean, you can look back at a training session, even if your game got canceled, just say, you know what, that was still a good day. I still had a good workout. It was time well spent. I took care of myself, that kind of thing. So it's super disappointing for a lot of people, but I mean, you just have to keep going. We have to keep doing our own thing.
Absolutely. That's a good point that you make, is that this, the exercise and how, like, from a mental health point of view, with what's been going on over the last year or so, the best thing that you can be doing is doing something every day that's improving your physical health. And diet jumps in, is on board with that as well. So regardless, it's never a wasted opportunity to get out and do something physical, even if your a game gets cancelled because of COVID or what have you. It's all positive for for yourself individually.
Right. Okay, so I have a couple of questions. Some folks watching at home. Is yoga a good go-to activity for older referees?
Absolutely. Yeah, yoga's great. Anything that's, it's a good strength exercise. It's a good resilience, mental exercise, being able to hold the poses, and obviously it's great for flexibility. I think yoga is excellent. And you'll see yoga in a lot of professional programs as well. They'll often have a yoga teacher that'll come into different teams and that to do some work. It's excellent. Yeah, to go for it.
Cool. And someone else, is there anything to consider, like, with training choices for their body type? Like, if people are a little bit heavier, are there things that they should start with before they progress to, weight training and really running and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, if you're starting out with your running, I think, like, the skipping's a good start. And it's the same, you're just gradually progressing that load, and considering the surfaces that you're training on as well. Going out for road runs on that hard surface, it's not going to be conducive if you're a heavier build. It's also obviously if you can train on grass, that's ideal. and making sure that the strength work that you do doesn't necessarily have to be muscle building in nature. Like, we can do some body weight exercises or gym exercises that are less likely to increase that muscle mass and that size. And if you're doing a bit of the running as well, like, they kind of counteract each other anyway, to a degree. But basically, it also depends on your training history as well. Like, what kind of training have you done throughout your athletic life? If you've done a lot, or if you haven't done much, or if you've had a long break, then you need to gradually sort of build that back up again, and not being aware that you need to have some speed component to your training as well. So you can't just do longer stuff and then have to sprint on the weekend, because you need to expose your body to what it's going to see on the during the games. So that's important to make sure that there is that component of speed in there as well.
Cool. All right. Well, Jarrod, thank you so much. You've given us so much to think about, and I hope people will consider everything we've talked about today, and maybe just kind of bump up their training and just aim a little higher. So thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy training like a lot of people. So just good. Yeah, thank you so much for spending the time with us tonight.
My pleasure. And if anyone's got any other questions, then feel free to email me and or Instagram or whatever. Milo Athletic is my little side hustle business. So yeah, you can look me up on there, or reach out through Facebook or whatever, and yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Awesome.
I'm going to continue to do shout outs. You can hang out if you want, or you can leave. But I'm gonna go ahead and do some shout outs.
Better get back to work. Better get back to work.
Thank you. Go on. You're good. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, mate. See you later. So we have some shout outs for last week. We're super jealous of everybody who's refereeing again. So, just be safe out there. It's really, I can't wait to get back to it. We're seriously impressed with some of your workouts. Rachel McGrail and Renee Wittenberger of Ohio, Elliot Sperling of Virginia, and Justin Canova from Utah. And a nice daily run of entries from Christopher McNabb of Virginia. Again, some of these smaller LROs are participating a lot. And at the end of this, have I mentioned? I'm not sure. The prize for the LRO with the most participation, like per capita or whatever, USA Rugby will do a free L1 class for them. So, here in this last week, let's really ramp up our LO, our pride, our society, like let's get behind our tribe and go show, our pride in, let's do some submissions. Let's log some minutes, right? So let's see what else. So from some of our smaller LROs, Adam Falk from Iowa and Ashley Baggett from Oregon. So next week we'll be naming our LRO winner for highest participation per size of LRO. A few LROs are in the lead, but at this point, really anybody could win. So Virginia, upstate New York, Ohio, and New England are pretty much neck and neck at this point. So, this is the last week of the Fit Ref raffle. So get those entries in, and I'm going to share my screen so that we can do the thing. All right, so this here's for the social winners. Oh yeah, tonight I mentioned this, right? Thorn something supplement. It sounds really cool when other people say it. Anyhow, for the social folks. Yay, Dave Mashinsky, you'll be getting an email from us tonight. Congratulations, you win some awesome supplements. Here is the club group. Who will win the supplements? Yay, Jason Sample. You'll be hearing from us tonight. Congratulations. And for the high performance folks, sure y'all love your supplements. No, I sure did. Let's see. Wadi yell jury. I'm sorry if I butchered your name, but you won this week's raffle for the high performance folks. So everybody keep it up. Next week, I think the high performance folks, their last Bronco they're running. This week they did a plank challenge. So to hold up a forearm plank as long as possible. They also did a push-ups thing. Pretty cool. Like I said, Joe Burpo's been heading that up. So thank you to him. So I guess it's time to go. So I'm just going to play a little song that I kind of wrote about the subject. I don't know. This is just something that I can do, and just kind of, I don't know. Hopefully you guys like it. There's 1 week left in the Fit Ref raffle. I'm antsy, but I don't want to make a scene. I have polished my boots up so much they look bedazzled. It'll be worth it when I get my vaccine. Set a goal, plan your training. Getting burned out is the worst. Recovery is job number 1. So sleep hard at night so you can let your sweat shine bright when you go have fun. All right, next week is the last one. Thanks, everybody. Good night.